So firstly, I want to talk about avoiding something that I call the "I should be this good by now" trap. I tried to think of a cool name for this, but I really couldn't because that is really what people say anyways. I should be this good by now. I know I've done this in the past. I've been guilty of this, and people I talk to have also been guilty of this, where maybe you've been at something for about a year or two, but you've been inconsistent, or maybe you just completely stopped and you're trying to pick it up at a later date. And there is that lingering thought of, I should be this good by now. I've had this with piano, I've had this with even guitar in some areas, certainly in language learning, because I was maybe less intense than I was at the beginning, or I just had these dips in my performance. And I'm sure most of you can relate, right? But one of the things you want to avoid is saying that you should be a certain skill level at a certain point. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong in recognizing that you were inconsistent at a point, or you just straight up quit, which I have on things before. But you don't want this to linger, mainly because as you're practicing, as you're trying to improve and get to whatever level you want to be at, that is going to be discouraging a bit. Now, ways that I have overcome this is I look at relatable people. If you're inconsistent in things, you can look at me. I have been inconsistent in a lot of the skills that make me who I am today. I look at other people, whether it be online or I talk to them in real life or Discord or whatever, and I ask, have you always been that consistent in things, or are there times where you started or stopped or you had to take a long break? And I don't think I've met anyone yet who hasn't had something that's come up. So pay attention to that. I often notice that we are very hard on ourselves, especially if you're really ambitious. And so this is one of those traps that you should try to start to be aware of and get this out of your brain. The difficulty of this is going to increase the longer you've been doing this thing, or even the longer you've been in and out of this thing. So maybe 5 to 10 years or so, you've been trying to get good at something, but you just can't, or you think you can't rather. And this creates even larger of a roadblock than it would for someone who's only been at something for maybe 6 months to a year. This is actually something that you're going to have to prioritize getting out of your life, because the longer you let this go on, the longer or the more difficult it will be to complete things or actually study and get that done. Now, how to do this? I've talked about this in my consistency in all hobbies video, but you want to really record your small wins and set the goal very close, if that makes sense. I notice one thing I used to do is I would get back into something, and I've talked about this, a lot of this before. Most of this video, guys, is me repeating things that I've said before, just in a different way. But anyways, one of the things I used to do is I would get back into something, and then I would set the goalpost very far because I was overly ambitious, trying to catch up for what I did in the past. But this is a horrible way to get into something in the first place, or even get back into something. So you want to set up small wins, maybe 10 minutes a day for the first week. And I know that sounds silly, but really you want to just get back into it. And then you increase it a bit more to 20 minutes, and 30 minutes, and an hour. And then after a certain point, you're not really going to have to try to be that consistent with that thing. So the next thing I have is, do not worry about learning things the wrong way. I think, unfortunately, a very unhealthy mindset to have with learning hobbies is that these days there's so much information, there's so many videos, there's so many tutorials, there's so many people saying that my way is the best and all this, that you're gonna be concerned about which one is the fastest, which one is the most optimal, which one should you start, is this guy wrong, is this person correct? And you're going to be stuck at the starting line. One of the advantages I had growing up is that we didn't have that many resources, right? So if you wanted to learn guitar and you tried to search up some stuff on YouTube, there really wasn't that many people teaching that many things. And you basically had to go get a magazine or something, or a DVD or something like that, and you really had to exhaust the few resources you had. There wasn't even a concern about learning things the wrong way, because you just had a few ways to learn anyway. So if it was the wrong way, you didn't even know that. Now, how do you mimic this? I've talked about this in one of my first videos, the Teach Yourself Anything. You really want to limit your resources, all right? Pick a few people that you may trust, or that you see have some of the results that you want to have, and then take their videos and completely exhaust them. Now, the thing is, you only have to do this for a couple months or a couple weeks in order to get this mindset down of not trying to learn things the wrong way. Because most people are concerned about this because they don't have much results yet. But once you pick something and you just move and you start to get results, it's going to teach you, just really on accident, that there really is no super optimal way to do things, or there is no better course and all that, because you're actually getting results anyways. I would also say take a look at your life now. This is no offense, but if for the last 6 months you've been stuck at the starting line, do you really think that's going to keep helping you? Or do you think you would have been better off even with a really poor way of learning 6 months ago? I would say think about that. You would still have more results doing a unoptimal way than you would just sitting there hoping that you can find the fastest, best way to do things. One of the reasons I continue to talk about this on the channel, not only because this continues to come up, but again, I said this before, I've had this problem with piano. The first 5 years I had my piano, I made no progress. This was back in like 2015 or something like that. I made no progress because I was looking for the most optimal course, the most optimal route to learn things, what correct order to learn. Should I learn the notes and the scales and these triads first, or reading sheet music and all that? I was stuck at the starting line for 5 years. I'm not even joking. Now, I've eventually caught up on everything and covered those bases. But that 5 years could have been extra practice time, really. And again, I don't like to think about I should be this good by now and all, even though that is a lingering thought, and it's a reality, of course. I'm not going to ignore reality. But again, it's one of those things, like, that could have been practice time that I could have been using. And so to help you guys avoid that, I would say just pick something and go. The next thing I will add is always think about why you are learning this thing. Now, I know sometimes when people say, what is your why? And all that, we get to the extreme motivational side of things, right? I'm not trying to sound like a guru here. You really want to think about why you're doing it. And it can be some extravagant reason, sure, but it can also be something silly. It can be something wild. Only you're going to see this. But I would recommend you write this down somewhere in a very small bullet point, maybe on like a Google Doc or even a sticky note, and just somewhere where you can see this consistently, and you can review this during, before, even after you practice that thing, and it's going to continuously remind you why you are into that thing. Like I've said in previous videos, one of the reasons I started MMA back in like 2012 is because I liked fighting games. I wasn't trying to be cool. I wasn't like trying to overcome any issues and all that. I literally liked fighting games. And where I got stationed in the military, I was very close to an MMA gym in Tokyo. And so I said, well, I like Street Fighter, I like Tekken, I like all this stuff. Let me go try it in real life. Obviously, it's very different, but that was one of my reasons for going, and that's what I always thought about. And so whatever your reasons are for doing whatever you want, even if it's just small goals you want to reach or things like that, just write that down. If you're learning a language specifically to read manga or something, or just watch anime with no subtitles, just keep that in mind as you practice, as you study. And the reason I also bring this up is because you're going to have very hard days doing anything. Even if you really like the thing, you're going to have days that just suck, just to keep it completely blunt. And these will help you push on just a little bit and get to the point where that spark sort of comes back. And you will not experience much burnout this way. Which, speaking of, in the burnout sense, I think burnout has multiple causes, right? But one of them typically is that you're not really focused on why you're doing the thing. You may know why you're doing it, but you're not focused on that. And I find that in my past and other people I see, if you just take the time to pause and refocus on that, again, no matter how cool the reason is or how silly it is, it's going to keep you pretty consistent in whatever you're trying to do, and you most likely will not experience burnout. Lastly, I want to mention speed of learning really quick. I'm going to elaborate more on this in a different video, but just a quick note. If you're trying to learn things too fast, you might actually be ruining your relationship with that interest, right? And one thing I do want to point out is that nobody cares how fast you learn something. I know that these days it is a nice clickbaity way to get you to stay on YouTube and look for better and more optimal ways. It doesn't matter how fast you learn guitar or a language and all that, because that time is going to pass anyways. Now, you guys know I do believe in learning fast, but I've differentiated before that learning fast and rushing are two different things. And most people, their method of learning fast is actually rushing, and you don't want to be in that. If you're learning fast because you have external pressure, you are absolutely going to burn out at a certain point. Okay? Learning fast needs to come from within. And I'm not trying to sound like Bruce Lee or anything, right? It really does need to come from within, though. It needs to be an excitement. It needs to be like a drive to just explore things. As I've told you guys before in some of the videos I've made in Japanese, one of the reasons I have a very high vocabulary is because that was my obsession in language learning. I don't really care too much about the grammar and all that because that sort of comes naturally with the input that you get. But I have a very large obsession with the vocabulary. I like knowing up to 10,000 plus words, even for no reason, even though I don't even use about 7,000 of those on a daily basis, right? I just genuinely love having a very high vocabulary for myself. I don't care to, well, I guess I do care to tell people, right? But I don't really care to tell people that much outside of like YouTube and just giving examples and speaking the way I do on camera in Japanese. But again, this is not because I'm forced to. This is not because I have a point to prove. This is because I just really like learning vocabulary words. Same with guitar. I have an obsession with fretboard fluency. So this is knowing the note names, triads, all of the inversions, chord shapes, scales, arpeggios, the intervals, how everything is connected on the guitar. I learned those things somewhat fast because it came from within. I'm really not trying to say that sentence like it comes from within. I don't know how else to word that though. But anyways, I have a personal obsession with that thing and there is no external pressure. So try to keep that in mind. If you're trying to learn fast to prove a point or to not feel behind, you're probably going to burn out. So find a better reason to get yourself to learn faster and you'll be better off for it. I will talk more about a few of these things in other videos. I just kind of wanted to put this out really quick as I get back into YouTube again. I think it's been like 3 or 4 months since I've made a video. But anyways, hope that helps. If you have any questions or any things to add or you want me to talk about in another video, just let me know in the comments. Do not forget to join the Discord. I'm pretty much active there every other day or so, or every day. Love you guys and see you in the next one. Peace.